Welcome everybody to another episode of Daniel Talks About Specific Wheel of Time nerdy stuff, because these videos are sacred. It's why this is not currently on a blade and instead is on a respectable representation of the series. Thank you to the fan who sent me this. But Daniel, why after all this time are you returning to one of the greatest stories ever told? Well, that's because Brandon Sanderson, in celebration of the 10-year anniversary of A Memory of Light's release, he done revealed a big old mystery. Now, I will say, this is a video that is going to contain spoilers for the absolute end of the Wheel of Time. That's right, the final book, A Memory of Light, spoiler warning. But I am going to also try and explain this in a way to demonstrate how Brandon Sanderson is just naturally good at storytelling and thinking of the smaller details, because this just goes beyond a great example of how the Wheel of Time continues to have just endless mysteries revealed to readers in this wonderful world of whimsy, but also an example for Sanderson fans to point at and go, this guy's been working at small plot details that have earth-shattering world ramifications since he was a youngin' finishing the Wheel of Time. And lastly, because I know a whole bunch of you weirders out there haven't read the Wheel of Time but are still gonna stick around to finish this video because you're just a curious little bee, so don't worry, I'm gonna explain it in a way you'll understand. But spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1. The Wheel of Time is a story which has a massive conflict destined to happen, called the Last Battle, a battle between the forces of good and bad that will determine the future of the pattern, or the wheel that is reality. Everyone's a little tendrily thread that spins together, and that's how society works. We live in one. And where we are right now in the story, that battle is happening. The Dark One, the big bad for the bad guys, master servants called the Forsaken, are out in force, wreaking havoc on the lands of man. Throughout the entire continent, scores of creatures of unspeakable nightmare are dying right alongside humans, who are giving everything they can to stem back the forces of evil. Now, these Forsaken are legendary beings from an age-long past where magic was understood in a greater depth than it is in the current age due to the breaking. Lore things you're gonna have to read the books to figure out, but just know these people from a time long ago in a galaxy that's currently the one we're in are super powerful. Quite a few of them have been handled, but there's one important one who in a previous age had a love affair with the last Dragon Reborn, or the prophesied chosen one meant to go up against the Dark One. But she's in a rather bad place. You see, Lanfear is a master schemer. Now, all of the Forsaken are schemers, don't get me wrong. There's even one called Mogideon who's like the spider, and she's like the master schemer. But this kind of proves that Lanfear is truly the master schemer. Because during the events of this fight, she's been kind of trying to play two sides. Not necessarily the good and the bad, but instead Lanfear, the previous lover of the Dragon Reborn and attempted seducer of the current Dragon Reborn, has been trying to be like, I serve the Dark One kinda because it's convenient, but hey, Luce Theron, if you kinda wanna make our own side, that's not necessarily the light, I'm open for it. And due to severe ramifications of her not necessarily being the most loyal servant to the Shadow, she's in a position where she's kind of damned if the Shadow wins and damned if the light wins. And when we see Lanfear's final appearance within the Wheel of Time, it is presumed she dies, because she goes up against Perenebara, who's able to walk in dreams with the power of a god. And so our combatants are set. In the blue corner, we have Perenebara, the young bull, Lord of the Two Rivers, Wolf Brother and Dreamwalker, wielder of the coolest weapon within the Wheel of Time, in my opinion. He considers himself quite the champion for the light, able to walk in dreams, talk with wolves, and you bet it, do some other pretty neat stuff too we're not going to get into for time constraints. And in the red corner, with centuries of torment and torture under her belt, used as a scary story to frighten children into behaving well for lazy parents, Lanfear represents the Shadow. But she's a bit of a rogue agent, always plotting and scheming for her advantage, and very willing to do whatever it takes to get revenge on Luz Theron and all the members of the Light for the scorn that has been shorn her way. And so our combatants are set. One leg of the Light stool versus one of the most feared of the Forsaken. Who comes out on top? Well, Lanfear tries to compulse Perrin. It doesn't really work very well. He ends up turning around and breaking her neck after she fails to try and get him to hurt some people that are on his side. So that's pretty much the end of it. All right. Isn't it a bit strange that one of the biggest schemers in all of history tried something so blunt and straightforward, not even dramatically against the man that scorned them, but just their friend? And here is where I must say, Matt Hatch, you brilliant bastard. Where I am an avid Wheel of Time fan, Matt Hatch is a Wheel of Time Harvard professor. And he was also gifted the ability to beta read books for Sanderson in the Wheel of Time. And when he was beta reading A Memory of Light, he kind of circled this and went, that's out of character. She's incredibly smart and a master of the world of dreams they are now combating each other in.
That don't make no sense!
And so Matt Hatch, after reading the beta for A Memory of Light, called this in a sense, and I do genuinely want to take a beat in this video to just acknowledge, Matt, you're one hell of a Wheel of Time fan. But despite this obvious, glaring misrepresentation of Lanfear's potential, nothing changed. Her simple defeat that Matt read in that beta version of A Memory of Light is still what's published today. Brandon didn't make the change. Is that because he's an egotistical, out-of-touch author who went beta reader saying out of character? I know better. No, you goose. And that is because, well, Perrin Ibarra, a leg on a stool reference you don't get if you haven't read the series, maybe he's got a bit of an ego, because he thinks he's got this all figured out. Perrin genuinely thinks with a quick little boop, stoop, ba-doop, he was able to take Lanfear down on her home turf just that easily. Really, every reader who never thought better, just like me. And therefore, the Dragon Reborn is going to know that all of the Forsaken have been dealt with, and Lanfear, a Forsaken scorned, if you may, due to some other things that happen I'm not going to get into, read the series, is not going to be a threat to the new world he ushers in after defeating the Dark One. How beautiful. A nice and tidily wrapped up story. Or is it? Let's rewind a little bit here to when Brandon Sanderson showed his massive ego and didn't listen to Matt Hatch. How dare he? It's because it was all part of the plan. You see, this is a Daniel Ocean style escape. Lanfear, she knew she was damned if she did, damned if she didn't. If the Light wins, oh no, she's going to be persecuted for her crimes that are in the countless. But if the Shadow wins, she's gonna be in the poo-poo house because she didn't do her damnedest to defend Daddy Dark One. Oh no! But what if she just disappears? Where Perrin learned to walk in the dream world, Lanfear has been doing gymnastics for time untold. Flipping, spinning, planning, and navigating. Lanfear knew she could convince not Rand that she was dead, but maybe his most trusted confidant, who is known for being kind of stupid. When Perrin unleashed his volley of vicious anger on her, she was able to use a mixture of compulsion and her powers within the dream world to make it appear as if she had died. But now, one of the Forsaken has lived free in the world for the ages to come. Now, there actually is another Forsaken who we also know is alive with a little bit of a neck ornament, but we will not talk about that. Read the series!
Is Lanfear alive?
Is Lanfear alive? And the answer was yes, Lanfear's alive. I thought that that was more than just that line. That was pretty obvious. I thought her whole scheme of playing with Perrin was an intentional, like, I thought people would pick up on, like, this is almost not a caricature, but she's doing the expected thing.
Yep.
But she doesn't have the history with Perrin she has with Rand. Why would she be doing this? Whole plot on her side was she needed to give something plausible that when it got back to Rand, if he lived, he would believe that this all happened. So when the good guys asked, the most credible witness, basically that in the books that I could come up with, was Perrin. A lot of what's happening to him has been twisted. Some of it's happening in the world of dreams in ways that he thinks he's really expert in, and I take effort to show how expert he is. But he is no expert over Lanfear. He's just confident enough to believe that he's right when he's seeing things that just aren't happening. Our end state is that indeed Lanfear is the most dangerous person alive. Next to Rand, she's probably the most powerful person alive. And nobody knows it, and she is so cool with that.
And I love this so much, not only because it is yet another example of how the Wheel of Time is so amazingly rereadable, because there are still more mines of gold to be delved into in terms of secrets of the lore and characters to be realized upon a reread, some of which Sanderson himself will admit not to knowing because Robert Jordan's notes weren't complete on some of these things. Go check out the live stream where all this was revealed, link down below. But think about what this also does for the Wheel of Time, because I have often thought it's a very clean ending for the series, what we get. It's super cut and dry in many ways in terms of total victory for the light, Dark One banished, even Rand al'Thor gets to live. I won't get into the details of how, but the Dragon Reborn gets his walking off into the sunset, lighting a pipe, ready to be left alone. And that's like the happiest it could possibly be to him, because Rand just literally wants to be left alone by the end of the series. If you want to know my favorite goal for any Chosen One ever, it's the fact that Rand is so worn down from being a Chosen One at the end of the Wheel of Time, he's just like, put me on a farm! Put me on a farm! And this has felt a little, maybe debatably too clean to me at times, depending on the day I wake up thinking about the ending of the Wheel of Time. I won't pretend it's something I often thought about. I love the ending of the Wheel of Time. But if it was a delicious meal before, this is like some pepper spice on top to give it that extra. And here's my justification of why, not only it being a very subtle thing within the text that does have the evidence there to pick up on if you look closely enough, but because it also resonates with a lot of the defining morality we have seen put forth throughout the Wheel of Time and Jordan's themes around character growth and development, as well as adding to the argument that the Forsaken are not as useless as many people make them out to be, though they are often very useless. Because with all the various factions and threats of the worlds put down, there's kind of this feeling at the end of the Wheel of Time where it's like the greatest threat left for humanity at this point is humanity itself until the things happen again it's the wheel. Everything's gonna get messed up again. And we're all very much so on the same page about that. But Lanfear herself is partially responsible for how awful things got in the last time everything got messed up. See how I'm doing my best I can to keep this spoiler-free while communicating with people who've read it clearly what I'm talking about? It's a difficult challenge. And yet, she is the one who, when everything is said and done and her mistake is cleaned up for, she's standing there going, well, I made it. Which makes sense, because consistent throughout the Wheel of Time, not all evil is on the same page and the same kind of evil that can be dealt with in a similar fashion, and not everyone who's good is always working towards the actual greater good, and often because of their own selfish desires or beliefs are making things actively worse. Throw into that pile a Forsaken, still walking the world to this day, that needs to find a purpose for their existence. That's goddamn terrifying. It adds this angle of danger and continued mystery and nuance for these characters to exist in the world, and I find it fabulous. But it does make me almost want like a sequel book to the Wheel of Time that just follows Lanfear trying to figure out how to exist in a world where if she reveals who she is to just about anybody, she's boned. All of the resources and allies she could pull from before gone, and a lot of punishment and pain has been put forth onto her, maybe possibly motivating her towards some character growth in the right direction. No, I'm not trying to say Lanfear would suddenly be a good guy, holy crap, but possibly a slightly less form of chaotic evil wandering the world, trying to put its own influence in the way things are going, because that's the core of Lanfear's character, in my opinion. And if there's anything that's going to reveal who she is, it's going to be actions like that could put her on the radar of possibly a still surviving dragon working a farm somewhere who's just like, working on my farm, working on my Lanfear. So the conclusion of this video from this sensational reveal from Sanderson about my favorite fantasy series, arguably of all time, is yes, I think it's a really fun revelation. I like that it's come out on the 10-year anniversary. That feels like a real treat for fans. It also makes me kind of kick myself for not catching it before, because looking back at it, I'm like, it's obvious! But the cherry on top is I have gone back and forth in my life trying to figure out if I want more Wheel of Time books. Sanderson has said he's done. He's not going to do anymore. It's not his series. It is Robert Jordan's. He did an incredible job finishing it, as we've seen with details like this that were his idea, apparently. He got the green light from Harriet and the rest of the people involved in the development of the Wheel of Time, and I think obviously so. It's such a great decision for the ending of Lanfear. And I am not trying to say it is the right decision for Brandon to continue putting out Wheel of Time books, but I am saying as a fan, with this, I absolutely want them. Lanfear is arguably the best villain that the Wheel of Time ever had, and having her still be alive canonically in such a satisfying way doesn't feel like a cop-out. It just makes me have enough questions as a fan to immediately crave jumping back into this world like a Olympic swimming pool, but there's already enough other plot lines to pick up on that it just feels so justified. But I want to make an absolutely clear distinction. While I, as a fan, would love more books exploring this stuff, I do not want Sanderson to change his mind, nor do I want another author to try and write this world. So I am of two minds. I still think the Wheel of Time is done. Let it rest. But then there's the animal brain within Daniel that is still saying, give me more. But that was just my deep dive into maybe my favorite Sanderson beat now within the Wheel of Time that we know for sure came from him. It is such a good ending for a character that I did think died in a way, or I was like, no, they're gone. But no! Like and subscribe if you have not already, and hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.